Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys and their stories with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Catherine Stratta to the conversation. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, Matt.
Oh, lovely to see you as well. Lovely to meet you. And this is quite an interesting recording for me, actually, because Catherine and I don't know each other. We've never really spoken to each other before. We've had a little bit of a preamble into this conversation. Usually I've known people around sort of LinkedIn or social or through my networks for a while. This is the first time I'm doing it like this, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited, actually, Catherine, to get to know about you. So if you want to just do a brief introduction to who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the conversation around your story with mental health.
Okay, so basically, I coach people who have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Okay. I also coach their friends, relatives, and supporters, because very often there's a big gap between the people who are suffering from this condition and people who are watching them, who are looking after them. And it's very helpful to be able to help people get into the mind of someone, because I have this condition myself, and I find that's helpful. I also help employers make accommodations, adjustments that will help people in the workplace manage to produce the work that they can, because a lot of bipolar people are actually very talented. Yeah. And it's a case of keeping them sort of stable, healthy, to get that most out of everyone.
Amazing. Oh, it's brilliant. And the work you're doing is so useful and supportive for those people who really need that help. So brilliant stuff. So we'll talk about that as well. Anybody listening might have heard some dogs barking as well. So we might get some dogs in the background as well, chirping in. They just want to say their piece, of course. Lovely. We love dogs. So let's ask the big question. Your journey with mental health, Catherine, you tell us a story. Tell us about what you did, what's happened, where you've been, where you're going, and everything else in between.
Okay, so my story started when I was 12. And I started having mood swings. In fact, I had mood swings all the way through school. I was lucky, I was reasonably bright, and I did get a place at medical school. I went to medical school, and whilst I was there, I had to be hospitalized because of a very severe depressive episode. And then in order to get back in, I had to have a psychological assessment, which I duly went through and passed and came back. But then about a year later, I had another depressive episode, and I realized that, perhaps something, maybe the universe was telling me that I shouldn't be doing this path. Yeah. And so I decided to leave, but it was very traumatic for me, because I'd always wanted to help people. I'd wanted to cure people, to make things better for people. But as I'm sure a lot of you know, there's different ways of doing that. Yeah. So after that, I still wasn't diagnosed at that time. And I wasn't, in fact, diagnosed till I was 25. And it was very interesting because I went to see the psychiatrist. And for the first time, I saw the consultant. Previously, I'd just seen registrars and things. And he was really quite different. He said, "Sit down." And he just smiled at me. And he said, "I've not read all your notes, but I understand you've had a really hard time." And he didn't say anything else. And I just sat there and I thought, wow, he's honest, and that he has said, "I don't know everything about you, but from what I do know, and that was very validating for me. And they'd talked before in conferences and things about whether I should go on lithium or not. And they decided that they didn't want to put me on lithium in case I didn't do medicine, and that I would need some creativity, because they thought I was quite a creative person. Okay. Anyway, he said to me, "I think that now's the time, maybe we should, look at lithium." And because of how he was with me, I was like, okay, well, I've had this kind of swinging, and I've not actually had a normal mood since I was 12. And it is very difficult to kind of have a life when you are either up or down, because you react differently to things. It's difficult to keep friends, relationships, things like that. So I said, okay, I'll go on lithium. Anyway, you have to titrate lithium, because you can't start on a high dose, because it is toxic. You have to let your body get used to it. So after about 6 weeks, I was like, wow. And it was like, this is amazing. And this must be how everyone feels, because I hadn't been normal since I was 12. And it was like, this is just, and then I was very lucky. I was able to go on and enjoy a 25-year career in clinical research, because I put to use my medical knowledge doing that. I didn't have a degree or anything, but because I'd had that experience, I worked for various companies that had medical doctors as their CEOs who appreciated what I'd done. So I had a happy 25 years. And during that time, my husband and I drove a Land Rover overland through Africa to the UK, because it was when he left the army and I decided to take a sabbatical, and we spent 9 months doing that because we actually had quite a bad accident in Africa and I broke my collarbone, the distal end. So I had to have that made, put back. I had actually to have an operation, which I had. And my surgeon was the guy that put the Springbok shoulders back together. He was incredibly skilled. And I got dissolvable tape. Had I had to go back to England, which was what the insurance wanted, I'd have had plates and things and had 2 operations. But this guy was just amazing. Anyway, 6 weeks after that operation, we got a new Land Rover and with the insurance money, and we were back on our road to through Africa. So that was a little dally, whatever, just to show you that, people with this condition can do what they want to do, if you are determined and you are ready to go. So anyway, fast forward to 2018. I was on lithium. My GP found out that my kidneys were starting to, kidney function was starting to fail. So in January, she said, you've got to come off your lithium. And I was like, oh, well, maybe now, because I'm a lot older, maybe now I haven't got bipolar anymore and I'm going to be fine. Anyway, that was kind of not quite right, but so she took me off it, she tapered off. And 2 months after I came off it, I was suicidally depressed. And for me, it was a real shock because I hadn't been ill for a long time. And I had really kind of talked myself into thinking perhaps things are going to be better. And, because nothing had happened. And there weren't any psychiatrists to see. I had to wait 4 months to see a psychiatrist. At first, she didn't put me on another mood stabilizer. She just gave me an antidepressant and I just went downhill. And it wasn't till the June that I was able to see a psychiatrist. But prior to that, she called one and he said, put her on lamotrigine, which she did. That can be used as a mood stabilizer. It's also an anti-epileptic. And what happened was I started to be chewing the inside of my mouth. I couldn't feel my fingers. I was dropping things. I had a rash, and it was just so, disabling that I went back and I said, I'm sorry, I cannot take this drug because I can't deal with all these side effects. So by that time, my 4 months was up and I went to see the psychiatrist, who was good. It was much more kind of about me than the other when I was younger. I think that the change in focusing on you and introducing what you want into the conversation had kind of happened in the time when I hadn't seen one for ages. And he put me on quetiapine, which I'm still on now, and which actually did help. But it was that depression took about 2 years to disappear because in that June as well, June 2018, my mother was diagnosed with terminal bowel cancer, and she was given 6 months to live. And Julie, actually, she died on the 1st of December. So she actually literally did what was expected of her. And I was very close to her. She died at home. We looked after her all the time. It was a very sad time for the whole family, but we had time to kind of grieve and say the things that we wanted to say. And that, of course, is obviously acts as a stressor, particularly with someone with a predisposition to mental illness. And so she died. And then in February 2018, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I spent the next 6 months having operations. I had to have a mastectomy. So it took me until probably March 2020 before I was clear. And because of all these things that were happening, I was really fortunate. I was actually given a psychologist through the NHS, and I had sessions with her for about a year because I had the grief, I had my depression, and I also had the cancer issues. And this woman was absolutely amazing. I have to say, she was a qualified doctor. She actually, on my first session with her, was supposed to be she was supposed to be assessing me for joining this bipolar support group with another lady who was off sick. And so I turned up and we talked a bit, and she said, it's clear to me that you are not ready to join a bipolar support group because there are a lot of issues that are going on for you. And so we had a year of weekly sessions.
Okay.
We talked about all sorts of things. I told her about the research I was doing, and I was also looking into different ways of helping myself really get through this bipolar disorder, and also give myself a path to go through, you know, sort of later on in life, because I've now reconciled and accepted that I haven't got better. So obviously acceptance is so important with this condition, because unless you accept something, you cannot then move on, because it just sort of stops you. So we had these sessions, and by the end of them, when sort of she discharged me, I started thinking it would be really nice if I could help people like me, and really just be able to do things that the doctors aren't doing, to talk about things like sleep, exercise, circadian rhythms, vasovagal tone, which is something which I learned about the cranial nerves in medical school, and the vagus nerve was just another cranial nerve. But now, since then, there's been so much research into what you can do and how to activate it, how to keep the parasympathetic be in rest and recuperation, which is again very important for us, because we have energy issues. One of the things, and also our circadian rhythms aren't quite, sorry about the dogs, aren't quite as solid, I would say, as other people's. So sleep is obviously a big one. And if you ask people with bipolar disorder about sleep, everyone will kind of roll their eyes. We've all had issues with not being able to sleep.
Right.
So basically that's where I am now. I am coaching people who have a diagnosis and who are on medication, so they have a certain stability. I don't coach people who aren't on medication, because I think it's important that they do see a doctor and they get an evaluation that way. But I do help people if they are suspecting they might be diagnosed with bipolar, because typically when bipolar people go to see the GP, they're depressed, because you don't go when you're happy.
Sure.
So they only see you when you're depressed, and they give you antidepressants, because you don't say, oh, by the way, 3 months ago I was really happy. You just and so you go away and you take the antidepressants, and sometimes you get better, sometimes you don't. But then by the time you come to see them next, you're in another depressive phase. So they look at the notes, they think, oh, this person had depressants, she's come back now, so something must have worked, so they give you antidepressants. And I think the average time to diagnose is about 8.5 years in this country, which is, I think, I mean, that just really, I can't speak about that, because it makes me really sad, because of the damage that people can do to their lives in that time, because not being stable, they have jobs that they lose, relationships, custody of children, all sorts of things that can happen because of this instability. So one of my kind of missions in life is to try and help people explain exactly what's going on, so that they can get the help they need, because the GP won't even consider going to a psychiatrist for something like depression. It's and to help them sort of explain what's going on, so they can get a referral, and then the psychiatrist can come in and actually look at what's been happening. I mean, I know you have to diagnose this condition retrospectively, because you have to have had a certain number of episodes and things. But I think, to have your life, I mean, I certainly know my life from 12 to 25 was a train crash, and I built things up and then things crashed. I built things up and then they crashed. So I probably should stop talking about it, because I could go on.
No, it's incredible.
Oh,
it's incredible. I think you have such a wonderful awareness. Of course, that's what you're sharing with people, is your personal journey, your personal awareness of that. I just wanted to ask, if that's okay with you, Catherine, in terms of the mania, because obviously, depression is what most people recognize. It's what you're going to the doctor to get. The mania state is obviously quite an extreme form, I guess. And I'm just can you describe or explain mania from your perspective?
Yes. Now, I don't get full-blown mania. I have hypermania. And mania will often lead to either being incarcerated by the police because you're doing things which you shouldn't be doing, and you're not aware of what you're doing. And that's the difference between mania and hypermania. So if people are exhibiting signs of mania, they very often get the help they need because the doctors will recognize that. But hypermania it's like you have huge amounts of energy. It's like having bursts of energy. You don't need to sleep. You're thinking, this is great, I could do anything. You're getting things done at 3 times the speed than you normally could. Your ideas are coming. You know, if you do any kind of writing or creating or anything, you can just concentrate on that because you are very focused with these kind of bursts of energy and things. And it really does feel like you're on top of the world. I remember saying to my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, I could conquer the world tonight because that's just how I feel. And that's, you know, that's nice when you consider there are many more depressions than there are episodes of mania. So it is kind of a bit unbalanced. But yeah, I mean, hypermania is great. I mean, it's I can say probably, I mean, I have never taken drugs, but the doctors say that if you take some drugs, that's the kind of high that you get. And a lot of people with bipolar do actually resort to drugs because they get that and they think, oh, this is great, I'd like to feel like that again. And of course, with bipolar, you can't control when that happens. It just happens.
That's incredible. I not really ever considered that, of having different ways of it showing itself in the mania state, you know. And I think that's one of the areas, isn't it, around education towards understanding things like bipolar. And we did have that very brief conversation before we recorded this. And so you're helping not only the person that has the diagnosis, but family, friends, relatives, supporters, everybody around. How do you find those conversations start? What experiences or what expectations do people have?
People just don't understand. It's like, you know, my son is going through these hyper periods, you know, and I can't kind of talk to him, you know, and what I tend to do is I try to get I explain what's going on in his world. And then the person is, oh, I didn't realize that. I thought he was just being difficult, or my daughter's in bed all day. She doesn't do anything. You know, I've been telling her to pull herself together, but she just doesn't listen to me. And it's like, you know, telling someone to pull themselves together is completely and utterly pointless. And it's actually could be damaging to that person, because don't you think that person, if they could have done it, they would have done it, particularly someone with bipolar disorder, because we do have these energy shifts.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. So it's educating family and friends on the other person's perspective, and I think that's where obviously your value becomes so important, because you can say it from the experience side and seeing it. You know, in terms of sort of referencing people to information, is there any way you specifically sort of say to people, this is where you can get good sources of information? You know, because obviously you can fact check it from your experience. Is there anything out there that helps, do you find?
There are various books that people have written. And there's some quite interesting manuals by doctors. But then again, it's not the same as actually having the experience from someone who's had the disorder, because you can always tell when you speak to a doctor if they know about it or not, or if it's just kind of theory, because of the attitude they have towards it. I mean, there's quite a lot of the Bipolar UK is quite a good organization, and they have support groups and things which you can find. There is a huge Facebook group. It was 65,000 people, and that is global. And that is for people with the condition, or friends, relatives, supporters, or whatever. And that has, you know, a lot of posts every day. So if people want to have an experience, then that's something I would suggest that they might want to join. I mean, I would suggest that the group is policed. When I say policed, I mean because obviously some things are triggers, so there are trigger warnings if someone is posting about suicide or something like that, because obviously it's a difficult situation. I mean, the suicide is interesting one, because with bipolar depression, it's what I call a very dark depression, and there is a lot of suicidality in it. And what it is most people with bipolar do not kill themselves because they want to die. They kill themselves because they want the pain to stop. Because being depressed in a bipolar way is that you are so encased in this sort of box, and it's just like every second of every minute of every hour is painful to you.
Right.
Your mind is going through this thing, and you really just think that actually you can't do anything with yourself, you're no good to other people, but this pain is going on, and you get to the point where you cannot deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's slightly different from the normal, people who have depression, who tend not to get those kind of thoughts going round and round and round quite so much.
Yeah.
So that's quite an important differential, I think.
Yeah.
And I certainly, when I was younger, I was suicidal, and I told my parents, and they just put me in hospital. And so then I stopped saying anything, because I didn't want to be put in hospital. I mean, now it's very different. I'm sure you know. I mean, you talk to a lot of people, and really, if you can not normalize exactly, but be there, empathize with that person, then let that person speak, because it's important. Communication is so important, particularly when you're in this box and you feel that you can't reach out to people, and you feel that you're in such a different place that it's kind of almost like being in people speaking another language to you.
It's so important, and I think you're right. Communication, it's one of the biggest challenges we have, isn't it? And it's sort of, and it's communicating so that people can understand. And I think that's where, unless you're willing to open your mind to say, I'm going to listen to what you're saying to me from your perspective on your journey, we're never going to really solve or fix, or I don't even think fix, but at least, support people better.
It's about support, exactly. I mean, we can't fix other people, but we can hold a space for them. We can listen lovingly. We can be there for people, even when they are undergoing this pain. Someone just being there does make a difference.
I can vouch for that, from personal experiences of, the work that we do with Samaritans and the listening that we do through other means and channels and stuff. So absolutely. I just want to ask, so what point did you determine that you could make this your role, your job, or what do you do moving forward? How did that happen?
It was really when I was talking to this psychologist, and I was telling her about something, and she said, "Oh, could I use that on my patients?" And I said, "Well, of course, this is working for me. Why not use it on your patients?" And then I thought, hang on a minute, because I had up to that time really felt that, a lot of challenges had gone on, and I really wanted to contribute in some way. And it suddenly then occurred to me that I could actually take my challenges, wrap them up in a box, treat them as a gift because of exactly what I'd experienced, and actually then bring that to people like myself, and also to people who are desperately trying to understand someone like myself. And then it was that I started thinking, well, I think, I have a coaching qualification, but I don't have any medical qualifications, but I have 48 years experience of this condition. And during that time, it has changed. Attitudes have changed. I mean, attitudes have changed since COVID, certainly. People are much more aware, certainly younger people as well. Because bipolar does often start round about 18, when kids start leaving home to go to college or whatever. And I would really like to be able to do something for the world to help people get the help that they need, so that no one has to go through this on their own, because it is such a lonely place. Really.
It is, and that's why I love having these conversations, because as I always say, I don't love the fact that you've had this experience in your life, but I do love the fact that you've taken your experience of your life and you use it in such a positive way to connect other people. And there are many people out there who today are probably worrying about, maybe I do have bipolar, or maybe I have depression, and they just don't feel that there's anybody else out there that's experiencing that. And I think that's where it's so powerful that you're doing this, and I just absolutely applaud you in the work that you're doing to help support as many people as you can through that that journey as well. We've got few minutes left, but I do want to make sure we sort of wrap into,
Sure.
your final thoughts around things you want people to understand. If you could share a message to everybody out there, what would you say? What would you be encouraging people to do? I like people to have like their favorite quotes in there as well. If you have anything that you sort of live by as your sort of life being or mantra of life or whatever it is, but I'll leave that with you just as a thought. So Catherine, just whatever you want to say.
Well, I would like to tell people that there is hope,
Yeah.
especially when people are suddenly diagnosed. I mean, I'm talking to someone who's diagnosed later in life, but who clearly, when we look back, has actually had this for much longer. There is hope. Just because you're worried about this, please don't keep it to yourself. It's really important to be able to talk to someone, find someone to talk to, because of these things, bipolar doesn't actually go away. I mean, I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Perhaps it doesn't go away. And the sooner you can get some help, the sooner you can move on with your life. And the more you can be contributing to your community for whatever gifts you have, because I believe that all of us have something to give to the world. And I think, sometimes people who've been through the biggest challenges often have the most to give. So please, everyone is important. You matter, you really matter, and your mental health matters. And please don't bottle it up.
No, I love that. I love that. I really do. I think it's great. And I think that's something we all just have to take into heart and to work with. We're all here for, we want to help, don't we? We want to support people. So with that in mind, how can people find you, Catherine?
Search for Catherine Stratta on LinkedIn. I'm the only one there.
Okay, brilliant. That's always good.
Also on Facebook.
Yeah.
Again, Catherine Stratta. So, and I mean, feel free to call me or whatever. I'm here for people. Yeah. That's what I want to do. And it gives me so much pleasure to be able to just talk to someone and say to them, look, I've done these things, you could try this or whatever. Yeah. Be open. And because, it's not just about medication. There is so much more to your life, and there is so much more to you as a person. And don't let that diagnosis define you. It's a diagnosis. It is something that you have. It is not you. And that's quite important as well.
Oh, no, absolutely. And do you have a favorite quote or a favorite thought that you can share? What do you look for?
Well, I do have something that's quite interesting from Kay Redfield Jameson, actually.
Okay.
She was live on the Bipolar UK conference earlier this year. And someone asked her, they said, what's your advice on telling people that you've got bipolar disorder? Okay. And she said, that's obviously a very individual decision, she said. But she said, bear in mind that once you tell someone that, they'll never look at you in quite the same way again. And I thought that was actually quite sad. But and then I thought about my experiences of telling people, and I told people that I've worked with for 10 years, and they've just been quite kind of, they've kind of retracted away a bit and things. And, it is difficult. And I think, I think that is changing, but I think she's right, because we all look at the world through our own filter. Yep. And that's the thing. And you can never know what everyone else's filter is. You've got your awareness and you're looking at things. But I think the thing about that is that the more people that are open, and people can see that, I mean, someone the other day said to me, I was telling you earlier, you don't look like there's anything wrong with you. And I'm thinking, well, what do they think that people look like? Because, we're all humans. Yeah. We're all here. And I believe we're here to help each other. And I think that's, the most important message. Be compassionate to people, listen to people.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I love that. And I think that's a great way to finish this. We're all humans and we're all here to support each other. Let's keep doing that. And let's keep being open and honest about when things are changing, when we're worried about things. we just got to improve our communication support for each other.
Mhm.
Catherine, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and well, for you to tell your story really, and give your wonderful insights, and all the power to you, because I think with the work you're doing, you will definitely help to shift the dial towards better awareness, supporting people with live with bipolar, of course, and everything else that you're working on and doing too. So keep up the amazing work. I just want to say a huge thank you to you for doing that. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Oh, it has been lovely. Just for everybody that's listening, if you do want to get in touch, of course, I'll put Catherine's details in the links to this episode as well. Of course, do feel free to reach out. I know Catherine's obviously opened an invitation to that already. If anybody listening wants to catch up with me, please feel free to get in touch as well. I'm always there to message or to chat to if you want to at any point. But of course, just take care of yourself. That's the most important message we can send to everybody today. Making sure you look after yourself, taking notice of when things are changing, reaching out and finding that support if you need to. If you are worried or struggling with anything at the moment, know that there are organizations out there that do help to support you through these moments. We're in a time of some serious challenges for many people. Samaritans exist today exactly to support you in a safe space to listen. So you can call 116 123 if you do need to talk to anybody. And there are many other organizations out there. Of course, Bipolar UK is a wonderful organization if you are struggling or you are concerned about the potential that you might have bipolar. So please do go and check out those resources as well. But Catherine, we are done now. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all the very best on your journey. Take care.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.